how have I survived there? I don't talk to people. I've met like 3 people and I'm a very quiet, curated version of myself with them. And even so, it doesn't go awesome for me. There are more and less accepting communities, if that makes sense. No way I'm from New York? No, I am not from New York. I'm from the Midwest. But I live in New York. I moved to New York for the job that I just lost. Other than that, I don't hate New York. I don't know. In a lot of ways, it gets a bad rep. It's not my favorite place. The music scene is kind of cool, although hard to participate in. I don't hate New York. I think a lot of people hate New York because it smells weird and there's a lot of pee everywhere. Is my family around or I just like exorbitant prices? Well, they moved out here too. So at this point, did I think to move to Europe for a job? Well, it's hard to do. It's not easy. As a non-American, New Yorker people seem cocky. I don't know. I haven't talked to enough of them. I think that they feel the need to project cockiness. Okay. This is an interesting thing. I swear that the culture here is that it is positive to overestimate yourself. Not because you're lying, but because everyone will assume that everyone is like politely presenting the best possible version of themselves. And that leads to a kind of overestimation in how you're supposed to talk about yourself. I think that the way that it works, right? Because where I'm from, you're supposed to underestimate yourself politely, which is also kind of annoying if we're being real, right? It's also kind of annoying to be like, oh, I dabble. I don't know. I play a little piano, right? Right? That's also a little annoying. I do it all the time because I'm used to it and they trained me on it and now I can't get it out of there. But that is also kind of annoying. But then you come to New York and while people are they're not mean. They tend to kind of overestimate themselves. So if they've taken some piano lessons, they'll say like, yeah, I know some piano. I know some piano. And if they're very good at piano, they'll say like, yeah, I'm very good at piano, right? Here, like I have had to like adjust, right? I've had to very much adjust because they see it as a negative thing. They don't see it as like, oh, you're humble and polite. They see it as like, oh, you're not very good. If you don't say like, yeah, I know what I'm doing with that. And it's particularly weird with coding, right? Because like with any area of tech, people talk about imposter syndrome a lot, but like even without the imposter syndrome, right? Even without that as a factor, it's really hard to say how much you know about a broad subject with many different areas that are all deep, you know? Right? It's really hard to describe your expertise in something like that. So you wind up in this situation where you have to kind of overestimate your skills, overpresent your skills, especially in a work setting. It's considered kind of like weak to not be like, yeah, I know what I'm doing with Docker. When the answer is like, I've barely worked with Docker, you guys. Like, I don't really know what I'm doing with Docker, but if no one in this room has worked with Docker, I'm probably the most qualified to do it. That said, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm not just gonna like sit down and know what I'm doing. And so for me, if I were gonna say like, yeah, I'm very comfortable with Docker, then that would mean that I had like done a lot of projects with it. I really knew what I was doing. I already had a direction on this project. Whereas in New York, in a workplace, if you say, yeah, I'm comfortable with Docker, that means like I have done at least one project with Docker and I am confident in my ability to do this project, even though I have no existing direction, right? So anyway, that's where I've been at. It's interesting to learn different dialects. You know, it's interesting to learn different dialects. If you want to be, how do I explain this? I think people often think that when you think about what you say very carefully before you say it, and so you sort of craft it thinking about how the other person will understand it, that's a sign of dishonesty. Does that make sense? Why not say the true? Well, because everything that you say goes through a filter in somebody else's head. So if you want to communicate something the best, right? If you want to make something the clearest, you don't always have to say the thing that is most true. Because again, that's going through your own filters too. The idea of like, I'll just say the most true thing, right? There is so much nuance in language. You know what I mean? Have you ever said, I'm walking here on the street? No, but I did once hear a guy say, I'm walking here. So that was my New York experience. He may have been joking, but I did hear a man say that. People are generally poor at estimating their own abilities. Yeah, that's definitely true. And the real thing is you have to think about how someone is going to interpret it, right? For example, the most accurate, I guess I could get down to it, like the simplest example is if you have a very self-conscious friend and you say like, oh, I don't know if that's the best dress on you. Like, I don't know if I like that one. as much, you know? What they'll hear is not what you said, right? No one hears exactly what you said. And if you have a friend who's like very confident, like really, really confident and knows that they look good, what they'll hear if you say that is like, why are you being weird with me, right? You have to say like, hey, that dress is awful on you. Please go change back. I hate looking at that, you know? So if you want to communicate the same message to two different people, you have to say it really differently. And a lot of people resist that. They're like, why should I have to change my language when it's their problem? And it's like, it's all of our problems. Communication is collaborative. If you're not willing to collaborate, why bother communicating? You know, at that point, why don't you just like say random words and see what people get out of it? Like, I don't know. I would love it if everyone understood the same thing when they spoke. But that's not true. That's not what happens. So if you want to be understood, sometimes you have to put work into it and consider how you're going to be understood. Anyway, yeah, if they won't collaborate, then that's bad. But I don't think broadly people don't collaborate. Just grunt at people at that point. Exactly. We should rebuild the Tower of Babel. So yeah, altering your language to suit the environment you are in is a basic trait of living in society. Now, if you are weird, if your brain is bad, if you're stupid, you might have to do that more consciously. Did can this red if vitamins cared about chocolate, Ellie? Thank you, Raxon. Great point. Yeah, some cultures like frankness better, and when you talk to them, if you speak frankly, you will be better understood. Now, I'm not going to make you do anything. I don't care if you're well understood. Like, if you want to be understood, though, that's what you have to do, right? That's not me making a rule. I'm not saying, like, you have to talk frankly to German people. I don't care what you do. But if you're like, why don't these people understand me? Why don't people like me? It's probably because you're not altering how you talk to consider how people will understand you in different environments. Anyway, that's something that I am constantly thinking about. Yeah, it's really hard, Harmony. It's hard to talk yourself up. It's uncomfortable. It makes you feel grimy. And also, if you're from a culture that does not do that is very against doing that, where you are supposed to underestimate yourself, then it's especially uncomfortable to be like overestimating yourself. Even correctly estimating yourself is uncomfortable. So yeah, that's where I find job interviews uncomfortable. Also, everyday interactions. Yeah, masking 101 with Robot Girl. So I don't know, when I'm being my most honest, I have to put the most thought into what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like, conversations that are just small talk, those are mostly just following scripts anyway, you know? Like, people like to do that, and that's good. But you don't put any thought into, like, how you're gonna be understood. You know, if they're like, how was your weekend? You don't, like, put a lot of thought and you're like, it was good, right? No, you're just like, oh, it was great. How was yours, right? No matter what you got up to that weekend, it doesn't matter. They don't actually care. That is also a piece of information. If anyone doesn't know that people don't care what you got up to this weekend, this is my gift to you. Stop trying to tell them. Stop trying to tell them what you got up to this weekend. If they're your friend, you know, maybe they care, right? If you get to know them, maybe they care. But if this is like a person that you see every so often on like a floor you don't work on, right? They don't care. Just say, my weekend was great. And if they ask what you got up to, say something generic, even if it's false, like, I saw my family, or I went on a nice walk. Just say something random. They do not care. And that's the best hack I've learned. Because if you say anything remotely legit, that's going to make this conversation take too long, right? This conversation is supposed to be short. Why do people even say it? I don't know. It's a kind of dance they like to do. That's the best way I can understand it at this point, is that it's like a hand game. Okay, did you ever play like a hand game like patty cake when you were a kid? When you were a kid with another kid, and you played it, right? And you realized, especially when you played with someone who didn't go to the same school as you, that they knew a slightly different version, right? And you adjusted it as you went so that you were playing one single version of the game. So if you are trying to do that with New Yorkers, you should know this is how they play the game. It works differently all around the world, and I don't know how to play this all around the world, but small talk in the Midwest and small talk on the East Coast, at least the Northeast, this is how I'll say it, is they're playing a hand game, right? The rhythm of the dance has to line up. If you do something too long or too real, it won't line up. You can't keep dancing. They don't know how to keep dancing. So the deal is, it's not that they're rude. It's not that it's like surface level or they're shallow. It's that they want to do this little like greeting dance. You know how like, spiders of the same species will do a little dance that isn't actually a mating dance. It's just before they approach each other to make sure they're the same kind of spider, right? There isn't anything being communicated there except, are we the same kind of spider? And so you just have to learn how to do the dance that says like, yes, I'm the same kind of spider as you. Yes, small talk in the oh, I've never been to the Southeast, but I imagine that the small talk must be different down there. I know that there's a whole thing about like Southern niceness. It's a handshake protocol. Exactly. This is just acting. This is just acts. So more than politeness, because politeness, people rarely understand the value of politeness for its own sake, right?
Oh, small talk, let me just refer to my flowchart to answer you the most appropriate answer to end this conversation ASAP.
But there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I think it's kind of sweet. I think it's kind of cute, you know? You just have to learn the procedure that tells people like, yes, I am engaged. I am the same thing as you, you know? I told you about the weather. Please act. No, exactly. It is just an acknowledgement. That is what it is. And it's fantastic, you know? It's a beautiful little protocol. And once you learn it, it won't bother you. A lot of people hate small talk, but once you understand that the purpose of small talk is not to convey information, it is just to establish a common ground, an understanding of like the fundamentals that you need before you can even communicate.